brown on brown.
I've been tanning a little bit. Make sure
Look at
I just stand up.
You on vacation soon?
Try to.
You got your little beach tan in though.
Okay, I had to get my base coat. Light skins have to. This is light skin 101. If you don't get your base coat at the beginning of the season, you're this for the rest of the summer. So there's a June base coat that has to happen, and then you kind of just let it all build over time. A slow roast.
I love it though. Sterling has this down to a science. Like even when he knows winter's coming, I got to take a real quick trip to go to the beach.
A little something just to
quick,
stave off the sickly yellow.
Which I don't see under here is like my winter shade. I'd be like, oh, I'm a little light skinned.
It's all fun and games till everybody take that shirt off and the truth comes out.
There's your true colors.
Okay.
Oh man, pure nonsense. You were already recording?
I've recorded all.
Absolutely.
Oh, okay. I'll take it.
We love a good outtake. All right, Ian. Welcome back to another episode of Keeping It a Bean. Keeping It a Bean is a podcast that brings together commentary and culture all over a cup of coffee. But we're shooting late at night, and y'all got the gist by now. We got some tea. But maybe some morning shoots are going to happen eventually, but whatever. If you are new here, my name is Marquise Davon Keese, this American Negro, but please don't ever call me Mark, ever, because they were trying it earlier this week. And I said, why would you ever try that? It's like, Mr. Mark. I said, no, that feels a little gentrified. It's not for me.
Every week.
Every week?
Every 2 days.
Every business day.
Gotta keep you on your toes.
Every time. Just, gotta be quicker than that. Anyways. But if you are not new here and you're returning, thank you so much. You already know what it is. Hello to niggas and niggas only. These are the vibes every single time you come here. There are a couple ways that you can support this here podcast. You can do it in one of two ways or both ways. Honestly, also works for me. That's a little bisexual action. Hey, we here. But you can do so non-monetarily, and that's by telling a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend. So that way, I think word of mouth is still the most powerful form of marketing. You can also do so by sharing this episode with your friends, anybody that you think this would resonate with, but also on Instagram. You can also share any clips that are also going to be shared around. If you are watching these two wonderful and lovely faces on YouTube, hit that like, subscribe, and that notification button as well. However, if I am your favorite Monday morning drive, make sure that you also leave a rate and review wherever you're listening to these here podcasts as well. So that can be on Spotify. If you're on Spotify, you can also answer the question of the week, whatever that is, whatever I feel. It'll happen after the episode's done. But if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, please make sure that you give a 5-star rating. Don't be a hater. Don't. And leave a nice review on whatever you felt like you enjoyed about that said episode as well. But that also helps podcasters show up on different playlists. And then if they're on different curated playlists and also just showing up an algorithm a little bit more, that's what also can help me out too. Other than that, make sure to use the hashtag Keeping It a Bean on Twitter or use the hashtag KIAB as well so I can keep up the conversation over there because I'm a man of the Twitter streets. Sterling knows.
A little bit.
Just a little
I keep an
something.
ear to the ground.
Just a little something. He said, Marquise, you good? You saw that? I saw that tweet. Don't worry about it. You minded my business. And then also not just that, I also recognize if you have a little extra money to spend, you can also do so monetarily. So you can go to patreon.com/Marquise Davon. That's MarquiseDavon. You can donate, or I like to say donate, but you can invest as little as $2 a month, which is $24 a year. And honestly, I know that you're tired of paying $12 for your Netflix account. I know that you're not using that gym membership either. All you Planet Fitness people?
Ooh.
Waste the money. That's $20 a month if you're a black card holder, but if you just at your local one, it's $10 a month. I know y'all ain't using it. Isaiah, you're a different person. Okay, I know you use it. But but this is a really good way to also invest in this black business and brand as well. So please, any way that you can support is also useful. I know it's an economic recession, anxiety's happening, all that good stuff. So just word of mouth is also something super powerful. So thank y'all either way. Other than that, real quick, golly, this light is shining today.
Dab you just a little bit. Just
dab.
A
Oh my gosh.
Down
Also want to
forehead.
give. Oh, now the forehead right in the middle.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. We
A
good
little
now?
bit. A little here,
Yeah,
too.
on the
Just
side,
to-
too?
just
It's
to give you
everywhere.
maybe a little-
Oh man, I'm just
Make sure it don't get in your eyes.
Huh?
Make sure
No,
it
I
don't
used to
in
get
your
sweat in
eyes.
my eye all the time. All right, let me focus back up. Focus. You gotta focus. And I want to give a huge shout out also to Dom Fowler for having me on her show as well. On her show, I was able to kind of talk around politics a little bit more, really just talk around like the state of the election, but also thinking around what happened after the assassination attempt. And before all that, Biden dropped out. So all of that kind of stuff was happening all in real time. So thank you for once again allowing me to kind of flex that intellectual and political muscle as well, and also get a little challenge too. I was not ready for it.
Okay.
I looked and I said, oh, there's a conservative black man here. This is interesting. Not me.
You've seen the
range of things. Yep.
That's another yeah.
That's another week. We'll be here. Anyways, so one shout out to you for having me on the show. Please make sure to listen on that episode. I'll also make sure to drop the links across all social media as well. You'll see the clips coming out very shortly. So we out here. Other than that, we're going to get started with the show. You ready?
Let's do it.
Yeah. This is one of my best friends. This was my first friend in Philly. I ain't even gonna hold. Like, I'm so excited for y'all to be able to meet this wonderful human. He's an equity practitioner. He is an educator. He is a friend. He is a brother. He's a son. One of the most dependable people I ever met in my life. One of the most selfless people I ever met in my life. And I get to call him my friend. And the rest of you can't. So maybe one day.
For a nominal fee.
For a nominal fee. Okay. Sterling,
what's up?
Fucking Grimes.
That's me.
Welcome
That's
to the
me.
show.
Wow. What's up?
How are you feeling?
I'm getting there.
Yeah?
I'm getting there. I am. So
how's today feeling for you?
How is today feeling? Today's feeling productive.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, be sharing some big news if I get what I'm going for. So give me a couple weeks, and then maybe some things will blossom. But either way, I will say I came out of a really good coaching conversation earlier. Mm-hmm. With some clarity around how I embrace more of my path, figure out what actually makes sense for me and kind of walk in that. So I'm feeling really excited about it.
Oh, I'm excited to get into this conversation.
Yeah, let's see what we do.
I'm excited to hear where you were at. Like that's really good. Like,
because I've been some places.
Yeah, I've been places. Some good, some bad. Not so good, but it always gets better. There's light at the end, right?
It is. Mm-hmm. So I'm learning how to embrace what that looks like, what it feels like, and to see it all kind of play out a little bit. So
I'm glad, because I know, like, we'll get into it. We are Virgos through and through. Oh my God, you're a Virgo too. No, you're a Libra. We're a couple days off. That's right.
Close.
It's okay, so close, but
no cigar.
No cigar. You said what? Yeah, I always gotta be a little shady every time.
We need balance.
Okay, and that's why
and
he's
so
a Libra. Okay.
that's
I'm really, really close. I'm 23rd September.
okay. See, Cuspy,
he's
you're
a
mad
Cusp too.
Cuspy.
He's
So
right with us, so that's
we see
you.
some things. Okay. Unity.
Okay, we're all here. Okay, at least we're September 20s babies. You feel me? Before we get into like this whole show, though, one, thank you for sharing that piece. But we're gonna move quick into this segment. So this is the Keeping It a Bean segment. This is where, think about it like your fun little icebreaker, Okay. So here you're gonna keep it a bean, keep it 100. This is where you get to release your most authentic opinion, whatever that may be, and you go from there. Cool. You can start.
All right. Everything's new. Everything's fresh. It's a new day.
Yes, it is.
Kamala's on top.
Okay,
Everybody's trying to
come
figure out
on.
what that means, what we're doing. That can mean a lot of different things for you. And black men, this is your shot.
Don't
Like,
fuck it up.
don't fuck it up. Like,
Go ahead. Talk about it.
I think there are 29,000 historic things that we will see happen, for better, for worse,
This
for
is
good, bad, or ugly.
unprecedented.
Okay? Most consequential moment in history where we're living in completely unprecedented everything, sure. And I think there is a very clear, specific ask that black men can be open to, can listen for, can step up for as it pertains to what the black women in their lives are looking for from their civic engagement in this process.
Right.
I think it's a lot more than just, are you choosing Kamala or choosing Donald Trump? I think it's much more around, are you engaged in a process that sets up a system to support people who have consistently given to others, who have consistently stood on the front lines, who are, again, in so many ways, stepping up and doing that which no one else can or will. And so I think it's an important conversation for us to have with ourselves around like, what does this look like? Because it can't just be like, sure, I showed up and voted because that's the right thing.
Right.
What does that vote represent in our lives? What does that mean about how we are listening differently? What does it mean about how we're taking seriously some of these conversations? Because it's easy to get caught up in the Twitter conversation about one man who like let himself sign a check, but like there's a whole world under that around access and opportunity and really protecting women and what does it mean to stand alongside women to protect themselves and to have the agency that they deserve over any number of issues that impact their lives, and that we benefit from every day. So I think there's an imperative here, and see, y'all done got me cussing, and my mama's gonna watch this, so I want that to underscore how desperately serious I am about this. I'm letting my mom hear me say this word, and trust me, Jackie don't hear me say this, but like, don't fuck this up.
Don't. No, I'm glad you started off with that too. To be honest, like I've also been in the same boat of just making sure. One, even like how I've been messaging it to people, I'm like, before even prior to Biden dropping out, I was like, my vote's always been consistently like beyond Biden, right? And so that's how I've always been like talking about it of like, no, we're now thinking around like the Supreme Court justice, right? Yeah. We're now thinking around who he can place in his cabinet. We're thinking around like all of these people that he's able to bring in. And that's important also on moving the needle. And I recognize like for a lot of people, that feels symbolic for a lot of people. They don't actually feel what that means, right? And so for me, what my hot take was going to be, get over that $1,200 fucking dollars that y'all got, okay? I'm sick of it. I am sick of it. I'll be honest.
Like, it's y'all really played her to her last dime. Like, y'all act like y'all have never seen a check before. Like, because the way, but come on, we scream about this every year. Wait till my check come in. So y'all have never seen a $1,200 return come from the government before? Is this your first time? Because that means one of two things: either like you faking, or you've never seen money, and we shouldn't have trusted you with it in the first place.
Let's talk about it. And
so,
because they've been pissing me off.
Play the long game here.
Like let's really think about it. And the piece about it, I was like, the piece where I can empathize to an extent, because I ain't gonna give you bitches that much. But the piece that I can empathize to an extent is like, this is also the space of like the economic anxiety that people are facing, right? So I think it's something to say when, annoyingly, like the Sexy Reds of the world or the Miss Nettas of the world are just like, well, at least he gave us a check and da 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 da. I'm like, I do think that those are manifestations of real economic anxiety that people were facing, and people also not understanding what tangible takeaways from government and the president can feel like, right? And so I think like that's what a lot of people are equating themselves to, of just like, well, at least when Trump was in office, like at least I got my check and at least I got an extra amount of money. I said, same thing happened with Obama, right? Like there's data that shows there's a correlation of the Obamacare and getting those stimulus checks, crime also decreased. So I'm like, if we want to really just nerd out for a second, I'm like, there's a very simple thing that is happening here, is that basic needs are being met, which means crime goes down, you dummies. And then let me not call you dummies, okay? Because sometimes I know the average of America is a 6th grade reading level. But honestly, like really delving into the conversation a little bit, I think the humane side of it is understanding like there is true economic anxiety that a lot of people are facing. I think the other piece is also what I think Kamala's biggest hurdle is going to be is going beyond the symbolic gestures and movements, right? It is being able to articulate like, what does her presidency, what is that going to feel like for us who experience poverty, for those who are working class, for those who are entering middle class for the first time? Like that to me is a much more polished way to draw in more Americans, because I think people can't think in theory anymore, and people don't want to wait long term to see change happen. And so I can say I think that's where, though it makes me angry, that's the one space I think I can empathize in terms of like where that kind of sentiment can come from.
No, I think it totally tracks. I think what I'm really interested in seeing play out with a presumptive Harris presidency is the idea that, one, we know what the data will show. Right. After a series of progressive policies, the same thing that we would have seen had Hillary Clinton won after President Obama, you will see the country improve. You're going to see it again if we see the presidency continue and allow more of those policies to like lay out and have the impact they were designed for. Like change at this scale is hard.
Yes.
It takes a lot of time to move these systems. Right. And if we actually have, one, a reciprocal relationship that says like, we put our faith in this system, we give you this vote, and then you do something immediate and tangible with it, which is why I think we're getting that margin of folks who are like, but that 1,200 happened because it did, and it was immediate, and it saved people in real tangible ways. government's got to get serious about that in this next administration to continue on what it's done in some of the big ways, and then make sure that some of these pieces really speak to specific policies that can really be felt at the local level. And I will say this is a really fun experiment that I'm now really interested in, because now we set up the situation where what happens, are you going to fight this black woman on policy or continue the charade that this is all about race?
Ooh.
But now we've got to take it seriously, because are you going to double down on race again and again and again and force her to prove you wrong?
Right.
So I'm really fascinated to see like what the establishment does when we have to get serious about the idea of like, if this person and a number of communities that they represent are now active players on the map, because now we're talking about voters of color in a completely different way.
Yep.
Immigrant voters in a completely different way, generational voters in a completely different way, because now you're striating all of these communities of color in so many different ways now. Like all of this is happening in I think a really pronounced way at this juncture, and it's going to be really fascinating to see just like, ooh, how serious are we when now it's like, okay, no, like we're going to give you exactly the thing you say you're terrified of and that you say is going to tear the entire country down. What happens now when the entire world has to see itself through the lens of a black woman?
Now, I got a question for you. I already asked Marquise this. Do you think that her being in a relationship with a white man affects her black vote?
I think it affects some voters, sure. I think that's a racial dynamic that absolutely can impact people.
Yeah.
But I think that's a conversation that I welcome. Like, I think look at every commercial you're seeing on TV that's allowed to pass now. They're all of interracial couples.
I mean, look
so
at any Netflix show.
Look at the research.
rom-com.
Interracial children are one of the fastest growing populations in our public schools. I've got a brilliant friend, plug Dr. Jackie Pang. She's an upcoming researcher who just got her PhD, and she's brilliant in doing research on mixed race kids. So it's a community that is literally one of the frontline conversations that public education is going to be having. So like we want to talk about what's happening in terms of influence and sort of these racial dynamics and how they play out. Like it's already here. So like let's dive in, and maybe we can find the actual common ground that serious people actually know exists.
Which is actually interesting, because like when I was elaborating on his question, it was definitely like even Kamala serves as a different kind of biracial, right?
100%.
She's not like the privileged biracial. She is Jamaican and Indian, right? And so even in that, those are two. They're they're how do you say it? Not privileged. I'm just go with that. They're not privileged identities, right? And so even like the reception to her is going to be vastly different from the reception that Obama had, and also just like the actual just imagery of her family setup. It's her and her husband. She doesn't have kids, right? And that's important to name, because Obama represented, though black and white biracial, he had represented a nuclear family. So he had Michelle, he had two little girls, like that's a family unit. And so that still symbolizes like an American ideal and a value, right? And so whereas like Kamala, that is quite literally like her imagery feels more progressive in terms of she's not choosing to have kids, right? And she gets to kind of go around in a way where, oh, well, who's your legacy? What does your legacy actually look like, right? And so I think like the average lazy consumer American would definitely think around like, oh, this is gonna look different, and like how can her policy actually work if like she's in bed with a white man? Can her policy ever truly be like pro-black in some cases as well, right? So I think those things do come in, but I'd be interested to see how will black men and white women necessarily react to her in terms of voting base, right? And I think a lot, and like reminder, like 86% of black men are voting Democratic, 92% of black women are voting democratically, right? And so like even then there will be some strays, but I definitely do think that this will be an annoying talking point later down the line, and just one of those things that become a nuisance, and she's probably gonna have to answer over and over and over again for a very long time.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're gonna see race, ethnicity, identity, background, upbringing all come into the conversation in a new way, because now they have to be front and center to determine who this particular leader is at the top.
Right.
Before, it's been easy to make it a puff piece, right? Like second in command, which still means something, but nah, in terms of what we talk about in political coverage. But now this is the presidency. This is the one. And so what does it mean for all of these lenses, all of these experiences, all of these intersections, particularly when we think about like the real focus of intersectionality vis-a-vis power, like, woo, this is a completely different way of having done things. And I want to be clear that I'm super eyes open that this is not just like some radical flying out of the left flank who's, you know, taking over everything.
Let's be clear. She's just a refined Biden.
We have a strong establishment candidate, and we have for the first time an established candidate who has these particular sets of identities at the top, and that is radically different, and it's going to mean something's going to change.
I think something's definitely going to change. I was like, I know on long term, and I was not planning on getting into politics this long, but I like talking to you about this stuff. Because Sterling does a wonderful roundup, most times post debates, that I just personally love. It's my favorite commentary.
I'm going to come back to social media
I got
one of these
time.
days.
We
And
out
we'll-
here. I will be patiently waiting. But the other thing that I was thinking around, particularly with her for like a more rounded out space, is like, what does this mean with the rise on tough on crime mayors, right, on local levels? And I think like for her, honestly, I think when she first came in, she's trying to like appeal to the masses, and I'm just like, nah, just be who you are. Like, you're definitely still like the generation that believes tough on crime is the way to like move and stuff like that. I think she's definitely trying to like push her politic a little differently, and there's like a tension happening there. But I definitely do think, I think around her policy and her history, especially like as a prosecutor, what does this mean when I think around like Miriam Bowser or Sherelle Parker or Eric Adams and stuff like that as well? Because there is, to me, there's a correlation on the rise of particularly like black folk who are getting into mayoral positions who are still tough on crime people, and we feel the effects of those now. And so I wonder, how does that trickle down even further in terms of like what support looks like and how that can particularly impact black and brown communities in the long run, because there's still a commitment to criminal justice and policing and stuff like that. You already know, if you're regular here, I'm personally like burn it all down. I'm the abolitionist, so that's where I'm at. That's not everybody on this show, but for me personally, this is where like sometimes my framework comes in. I'm just like, what does this critical eye look like from a criminal justice standpoint with the mayors who are gaining more notoriety in these moments?
I mean, I'm hopeful, and President Obama got you again with that one.
The black excellence got you every time.
But like he really did peg to his great credit, like the idea of hope in a more existential sense that kind of pervades at least my political ideology. I think it's really around. So we've talked about this. Like, I see my role here as an emerging leader in this space, whatever you want to call it. Like, I see it as condition making. So that table that's flipped, I don't see it happening immediately, because I see too many things that are literally like nailing it to the ground. And I think what we're getting really good at is pulling nails out of the ground. And so if we can do that stuff well, I see my role as being able to help make some of that happen, so that when we're like ready, move.
Go.
we love a on one,
pragmatism,
right?
like, gonna hit.
So I'm thinking a lot about, like, again, what does it mean for us to have a consistent legacy of impactful policy that actually changes lives?
Right.
And figuring out the ways to make that more local and real for people. And that's a conversation that engaged folks need to take the responsibility for, because that's what changes voter patterns. Someone with a personal connection shifting your mindset.
Right.
But I think it's also about like, now we can lay some better infrastructure. Now the conversations look different between those who are organizing and pushing for these pieces and the system of folks who are in power, in position to be able to move things. 4 more years gives us space to put more people at tables. And that is a next step that we have to recognize. Like, half of the things that you want shifted do not happen without going through this massive process. So,
and that's actually been like my big push. I'd spoken on Around the Way Curls around like, what's his name? Why am I bugging on his name? Race Matters. He wrote it.
The book.
Yes.
Oh,
what's his?
Now we've got to do the.
Oh my God, Race Matters. Dr. Cornell West. There we go. Running. We out here. Got it. I try to beat you to it. But I was talking about it. I was like, no, I'd rather us be able to right now. I was like, abolition is still strategic, despite what a lot of people think about it. Yes, it's a radical framework, but I'm like, I think abolitionists, if we really want to think around getting our policy pushed into the true ideology we believe in, it also requires incremental steps, right? And so I'm like, push on the local level, right? And so like for me, I'm just like, look at what the Working Families Party is doing right now, right? Like, these are values that are aligning to the work that we do. Like, shout out to Lorenzo, shout out to Andre Carroll, and a couple other folks that I really bang with, Salah, Muhammad, really dope people who are doing intentional work around like making progressive policy that makes sense to everybody else. But we just tend to move with bad faith efforts because this is not what we're used to. And so we have to hit a critical mass of folks who are like, and niggas hear me say it all the time, culture changes before policy does. And so how do we hit a critical mass of folks who are believing in what the world should feel like and what my neighborhood should feel like and what my city should feel like? How does this make sense at a policy level as well? And so I kind of like, and like look at who's there, and then slowly but surely you start to see them moving into the House, moving into state levels, moving into federal levels, and that's how we can start pushing. I was like, I don't think we're gonna see somebody who's like super radical as a black president for another 2 decades, right? But the people need to wait and feel the efforts of what people were doing. I was like, abolitionists were at the front of George Floyd, right? They're at the front of a lot of these organizing methods. It's just people don't realize who they're attaching some of these results to a lot of time. And so that's what I think gets lost in communication a lot of time as well. So I'm definitely interested to see where that level of strategic space is going to be moving in terms of like getting more radical thought and people into these positions to make actual policy, and that intersection of meeting organizers and policymakers and those really big decision makers in other spaces too.
Yeah, I'll send the last thing, so I know you want to shift gears.
No, we're all good.
Like,
we chatting.
I really think there's so much possibility to shift the trajectory. Like, that is really what I think this whole era is really about. And so, you know, a move like this creates a really interesting, I think, period point on this idea of Trumpism. Like, not the end of that like, viral strain by any stretch, but like there is very much, I think, a point to be made and a point to be experienced by everybody when we can actually say, like, no, let's pull the wool back fully. And that's why I'm so excited for these debates. I'm like, oh, no.
Oh.
Run the record, run the receipts, call it out. Let's break it
I
down.
love that social media has been bringing up her debates recently, and I said, like, cook them.
And let's have serious conversations. Like, that's the piece that I keep waiting on, and I'm excited for like younger, more progressive candidates that are doing more of this. And you know, people were giving AOC a lot of credit for the fact that she just like laid out points and gave people insight. And I'm like, yes, more people just need
to give information.
Like, can we have a conversation talking the same language on the same level at the same time? Like, we spend so much time talking past each other or doing what we can to make sure that something flies under the radar to still check the box to say that we communicated. And
what's it actually doing?
So I know I'm putting a lot of hope into the space. I'm thinking through like what my particular role in some of that is and how do I like leverage a platform to help people make informed decisions.
I'll be chatting with you right after this. Yes, I'm in the works of something fun.
Okay.
Yeah, sir. No, thank you for sharing that insight. Like, you are definitely like a political thought that I personally enjoy a lot of time. You have helped push me in terms of my stuff, and I'm hard-headed. It ain't, but you know, I'm gonna respect another, you know, Virgo here and there. You feel me? We out here. We try. You succeed. I'd be like, damn, I respect you. I respect it.
You know, it's that.
When you can show me something, you can show me something.